In this quick tutorial, I'll be showing you how to use the SUMIF and SUMIFS functions. This is a monthly budget template that I made, so we've got a list of different descriptions and categories of different expenses and incomes that I have incurred throughout the month of January that I'm looking at. So this is the month that I'm viewing January. So what I want to do is I want to calculate a SUMIF function that is going to sum all of the expenses that I've incurred on this spreadsheet, whether it be expenses or the incomes, so we can put them into the actual expenses. Because we have these budgeted out from before, but we need to come up with the actuals. We don't want to have to add those manually. Using SUMIF can save us a lot of time here. So first we're going to begin by typing the equal sign and hitting sum. The second or third option you have SUMIF and SUMIFS. So first let's click on SUMIF. So the difference between SUMIF and SUMIFS is SUMIFS will have multiple, you can put multiple arguments in order for something to sum up. SUMIF is just going to have one argument and one range. In this case we have a range, which is what we are going to specify for our criteria, and then the last thing that we're going to want is the sum range. So for this range, what we want to do is we want to select where we want the criteria. So in this case we want to add up everything that is labeled as housing under this category in our sheet. So I'm going to first click on this column, the category column, hit comma, and then for the criteria, I'm going to select cell J8. I could just type in housing, but I'm going to select cell J8 because it has housing in there for me. So if I were ever to change this column or to change this housing row into something else, then it'll search for that automatically. So that's going to be our criteria, and then our sum range, since housing is an expense, it's always going to be in this expense row, or this expense column, so I'm going to select this expense column. And then we'll hit end parenthesis and hit enter. And bam, there we go. We have incurred $1,200 in expenses. That's our actual expenses for housing, which does make sense. That's what we have here under housing, under this mortgage payment. So now what we can do is we should be able to just click and drag this all the way down for our actuals, and then we should get exactly how much we are incurring actually for our expenses. So we've got $100 worth of insurance, $100, $150 of utilities, all of this stuff adds up. So that is how SUMIF works. So now if we hit Control Z and go back, I will show you how SUMIFS work if we want to include multiple criteria. First, we're going to hit the equal sign again and type in sum, and SUMIFS is going to come up. Double click on that. So first, now SUMIFS is a little bit different. It's structured a little differently, so we have to walk through this a little bit slower. So first, we have the sum range. It's going to tell us exactly what it wants, so always be aware and pay attention to what it is telling us to do down here. So sum range, we want the range of what we are summing. So what we're going to be adding is the expenses under this column, column F. So we select column F, hit comma. Now it's asking for our first criteria range. So this is the criteria we're looking for. Again, this is first going to be the category. So this is going to be column D because I'm going to be looking for whatever is labeled as housing. And then I'll hit comma again. And then again, we're looking for this criteria. So that criteria is going to be housing. So far, it's pretty much the same as SUMIF, just in a different order. So then if we hit comma again, then what it's asking, if I pull this over here, now we're looking for criteria range 2 and criteria 2, and then it can continue on 3 and 3 if we want to continue adding more and more arguments. But in this case, I just want to add an argument that says, oh, well, I want to make sure that it's the month of January that it's adding up. So we're not just adding up every single month. So to do that, I'm going to select my criteria range 2. So I want to select this month column, so column A, because that's what's going to include where I want it to show as January. And then we'll hit comma, and then criteria 2, in which the month I have viewed up here in cell K, K1, I'm going to click that as my criteria 2, because what it's doing is it's going to be searching columns A for January, and it's just going to match it up to what column K1 says. K1 tells it to search for January, and then A, the column A, is going to be telling it where to search, if that makes sense. So then we'll hit close parentheses and hit enter. And again, we're going to have that same actual amount. And just to show you that this works, we'll type in February. We'll type in another expense here, we'll say we'll have another mortgage payment, and then we will put that under housing. We'll say it's another $1,200, and then bam, it doesn't update, so that means it's correct. Whereas if this was a SUMIF and we didn't have that other criteria saying that we were going to be viewing just the expenses in January, then this would have added it to that number. So we can just drag this on down, and oh wait a second, we have a problem here. What's going on? So let's look at what's going on here. So what's happening is my second criteria, it's moving this value down. So I was looking at K1 because I'm trying to say that I want to look at January, but that cell is adjusting downward as I copy that down. So I got to use an absolute cell reference here so that it doesn't adjust when I move it down. So I'll put a $sign in front of column or row 2, and that will prevent us from moving downward. So I'll put it actually up here in front of 1. And this is back in cell L8, and then we can just drag this down, and then everything's going to update accordingly. We'll do a quick recap by doing the same thing here in our actual column for our income. So again, we're going to type equals. In this case, we'll just do SUMIF. We'll do SUMIF. We can click on it. Then it'll ask for our range. Again, this is our range for our criteria. So again, we're just going to do our income 1 here. So we'll click column D, which is our category for income 1, and then we will select our criteria, which our criteria is we want it to search for income 1, so we'll click on cell J3 here, hit comma, and then our sum range, what we want it to sum up, in this case is going to be our income column, so this is column E, so we'll select that, and it's going to be E to E, then we'll close parentheses and hit enter. So because I didn't have that second criteria saying only look at January, it's also adding up everything from February as well. In this case, we didn't specify to only look at the month of January, so we have a February deposit here from income 1 as well. So it added the $2,000 from February and from January, which is why it's showing $4,000 here. So just be mindful of whatever you're doing, whether you only need to use one argument or only have one criteria, you can use SUMIF. But if you have multiple criteria, then you should use SUMIFS. So for example, let's just delete that out and use SUMIFS here instead. Equals SUMIFS. We'll click on it. Again, it wants our sum range, and this time it's going to be our income. Hit comma. Criteria range 1, we want it to be our category. So that's column D, hit comma. We want it to look at income 1, that's our criteria. Our first criteria, we'll hit comma. We don't need to put in the sum range again, it's just asking straight for our criteria range 2. So for our criteria range 2, we're going to again click column A1, hit comma, and then we want it to look for January. And in this case, I'm going to put a $sign in front of the 1 so that it doesn't adjust that row down as we copy it down. Then we'll hit close parenthesis and hit enter. So because we have that second criteria now, it's only going to show that $2,000 deposit from income 1 that happened in January. So that is how SUMIFS works. And we can just click and drag this down in this case, and now we have our income 2 from January as well. That copied it down, and it shows our side hustle from gaining $1,200 here as well. Hopefully you found this video helpful and that you learned something new today. Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications if you did, and look forward to a lot more Excel tutorials and spreadsheet templates in the future. Have a nice day, guys.